I have been in an extramarital affair. I'm myself been, and I know how it works for a married man. There is not peace even at the either end.
I feel like even people who are in monogamous marriages need to keep a little bit of an open mind that once in a while you're going to meet someone and you're going to find someone else attractive. That doesn't mean that you're going to sleep with them. Do you think people should schedule sex?
Yes, we can schedule a time for sex where we can give our body that kind of space and not just keep it to like, okay, we have to finish it in 1 hour. Trust me, it's so subconscious.
What is a really major misconception most couples get wrong besides these things in terms of female and male sexuality?
Libido mismatch, because no matter what kind of a pair you are, there will be a libido mismatch. There will be a partner with a higher sex drive, there will be a partner with a lower sex drive, and this is something that is not really talked about between the couple as a society. So they come into the marriage, the person with higher sex drive, he or she comes into the marriage thinking that I'm going to get a lot of sex.
If somebody had to fix this sexless marriage thing, do you think counseling can fix that? And how many people are actually even practically willing to fix this in your experience? I'm super happy to be speaking with you. I've seen a lot of your great work and very bold stuff, and like the fact that you live in India and we come from such similar cultures. Like, no matter how much we say that we have a border in between, at the end of the day, we're one people. So
Yes, yes.
it's in this society, like the work that you're doing is so powerful, and I'm sure you get so much hate for it, but you try not to be brought down by that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, if it had been just me, I might have just, did it out of some maybe temporary excitement, and I would have left it. But I think it's also about a lot of people who kept me on this path, a lot of women, a lot of married couples, frustrated men. Like I can talk about personas. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what kept me on that
Do
path.
you want to briefly introduce yourself for the people who are not aware of your work?
Yes, so I'm Pallavi Barnwal, and I am an intimacy coach from India. India is the land of Kama Sutra. Uh, the first book on sex was written in India 5,000 years back, but after that we have forgotten it all. So we we have again now we are left at mercy of porn to educate us about sex, and that has consequences. That has extreme issues, and there are a lot of sexual issues. Our society doesn't refuses to acknowledge it and recognize it, but these issues are there. And I was also I will say a victim of those issues. I had a sexless marriage. I had sexual abuse. I had sexual dissatisfaction where I had to like just do it for the sake of the man. So I never knew that I am deserving of pleasure and I'm deserving of my boundaries, and no education at all. And I think from that space I started writing about it, because I was a writer also. And for a writer, the writing is a way to express their feelings. So I started expressing my feelings about this subject. That was like something a lot of people say, oh, because a lot of people who are writers cannot even write about this. So I somehow managed to write it. And then I was like, my DMs started coming in where people started sharing their stories, their fantasies, their extramarital affair guilt. And I was like, why they're writing to me? I am no one, I am just a writer. But why they are sharing it with me? I can't do anything about it. But then it never stopped, and then I started taking an interest, like because of the problems I was receiving. And there was a man who said, I like your work so much, but I can't comment on your post because my wife will see it. So I felt that even admiration of something which is you like is like you have to think so many times that people will see you and they will judge you even if you comment on a topic like this. And that's where I started to take it head on, like.
So I like that you introduced India as the land of Kama Sutra. Like I have two books. I have two Kama Sutra books. One is with the pictures and one is just the text. And I was discussing this with my partner, and we were like, Kama Sutra is probably, it's not even a sex guide. It's just the oldest form of education. Like he said that, and he was like, I think that it's just an educational book. It's not even sex, it's just about your body, and it's just a kind of education, and we don't know why Kama Sutra is like so frowned upon. And I always say this to people that, you know, polyamory existed in South Asia long before white people made it the norm, because like South Asians invented the Kama Sutra, so it was completely normal. It was colonialism which brought all these laws about monogamy and marriage and, you know, all these social constructs.
Yeah, yeah. Even in Kama Sutra, there are references about other partners, and that's striking. Yeah. Even in Khajuraho, they have like temples, erotic temples in India. They have carvings where stone carvings where there are like more than one people involved in some kind of a intimate union. Yeah.
You know, you talked about your personal experience and the fact that you were in a sexless marriage. Why are there so many sexless marriages these days? And this happens all over the world, not just in India or Pakistan or.
I just got a query. In fact, I can read that query. Just 5 minutes back, this young girl, she writes to me. She says, "Hi, urgently need you. Urgently, I need you. Actually, I love my husband. It's been 9 years that मेरी शादी को 9 years complete हुए हैं, but still our sex life is not good. Our sex life is not good. सच तो ये है, मुझे ज़्यादा इंटरेस्ट नहीं आता सेक्स में, but my husband interests in sex, like she's trying to use in that broken English, but
Yeah.
I am not satisfying him. So what should I do? I try my best to keep him happy, but nahi hota mujhse.
Yeah, for those who don't understand Hindi or Urdu, I can just translate it. This woman is saying that she has been in a sexless marriage, or not in a sexless marriage, but in a marriage where she's trying to keep her husband happy for 9 years, but she's not interested in sex.
And she's also saying her inability, like I can't do it, like it's like I'm trying to do it, but it's like sex is something that is, you don't have to push yourself to do it. Like she's saying, somehow I'm not able to do it, that she's expressing that she's not saying that it is something I'm naturally want, but rather it's become an obligation for her. The way she's reaching out, like if like the underlying references which a lot of guys are living is somewhere, they feel like if only I can go through it, it's okay. But the problem happens when they are not even able to go through it. So there are three points I'm going to talk about. Okay, so the point one is uh, pleasure, which is what we are saying. Okay, pleasure. The point two is going through it, which means you're not getting pleasure, but you're still going through it. And the point three is I'm not even able to go through it. So usually we focus on these two extremes, but there are a lot of women who are having sex, but they are going through it. I have had many sexual encounters in my own marriage where I was going through it. I did not
Yeah,
have
just
pleasure. I
getting the
could not
job
stop
done. Yeah.
getting the job done.
Yeah.
Yes. So these are also, like, I don't know where we have to put those marriages, whether they are sexless marriages. They are definitely, also they should be seen, because sexless marriage is not just absence of sex for a woman. She's not liking it, but in this case she's not even able to go through it. That's what she's saying, if at all I can go through it, but I am not even able to go through it.
But why is this the case? Like, this is not just for women. A lot of men are in marriages where they are not having sex. Sometimes I've seen cases where every people had a smooth sex life, and then they had a baby or something happened or nothing happened, but after a few years the man just loses interest or the woman just loses interest. And then they are together for like 10, 11, 12 years without sex. Like, why?
Yeah, it's natural, I will say, given the given how they have learnt about sex and how they are doing sex. This is natural. And why this is natural? Because one, what they have learnt about sex is something, it's like they keep sex as a standalone activity. It's like I have my rest of life and then I have a sex life. So this sex life is always disintegrated. What I did was, recently I had a workshop, an intimacy workshop. I conduct intimacy workshops. So couples came and I said, okay, let's create a sacred space for your intimacy, which means if you have to honor your intimacy. And I gave them objects, I gave them fruits, flowers, incense sticks, lamp, then balloons. I've given them lot of red balloons, and and they created such beautiful beautiful space. And I said that in our country no one honors sex is seen as something which is not worthy of honoring. We honor money. There is a festival which is Diwali, which is about honoring money. We honor health. There are so many festivals. We honor education. There is this Saraswati, goddess is Saraswati, but Kamadeva is not honored. Kamadeva is also a god. He is a god of sex, in Indian god of sex. No one honors Kamadeva. So the word honor is not linked to sex, which means sex is not an honorable act, it's a shameful act by default. Because it is not honored, which means there is shame. So then the first thing is, they don't prioritize it. They don't say it's so important that they need to invest time learning. They think, okay, I'm going to watch a movie and I'm going to watch a porn and I'm going to listen to my friend gossip, and that's enough. And then what they learn is not how sex is something which is horny sex. It's a horny model of sex. Like, I'm feeling horny, you're feeling horny, and then we do something, and then it builds up, we hit a climax, and then done. That kind of sex is not possible in a long term relationship after some time, because that kind of a sex is hot sex. You call it as a hot sex. But in a long term relationship, after a few years, a certain coolness comes, especially when you are in an institution called marriage, where marriage brings extra layer of certainty. you know and that certainty can be a killer of libido, because libido also needs some gray, some evilness. I will say libido is not all white. Libido is black and white. There is a lot of blackness or grayness. So marriage is like certainty, guaranteed companionship for rest of your life. So that coolness, when it comes, it then when the couple hits through that coolness, they are not able to have this hot sex, and they don't know how to have a cool sex, which is what I call it as a relaxed love making. I do a lot of work. This is like my latest research area of interest is relaxed sex, relaxed love making, mindful love making. So this is the problem, that they always keep striving for that hot sex, hot, passionate, intense sex, which is about building up excitement, excitement, excitement.
I mean, I was gonna say this, shouldn't it be the other way around? Like, if you're really comfortable with someone, that it should get easier and easier with each time. And that's how I think. But what is the main difference between this hot sex and relaxed sex?
Okay. Okay. So hot sex is, when I say hot sex, it is something which is driven by your mind. Like, we have a certain perception of sex, which is the foreplay, intercourse, orgasm. So when a couple is getting intimate, they already have this set in mind. The mind is set. The mindset is, this is what I am going to do, this is what I'm going to do. So what they are doing is, they are pushing their body to follow the instructions of the mind, because mind is saying, okay, first you have to do some foreplay, then the intercourse will happen, and then one person will come, and then the other person will come. So it's a straightforward, predictable model, and then they are doing it again and again and again. So what they are doing is, they are more focused on doing rather than being. Like, I am into this, I am in this moment, and my husband is touching. But instead of being completely into the touch, I'm thinking, okay, we have to do this, and then we'll get to the next stage. And that is set in the mind. That's a big problem.
Right. Yeah. And with relaxed sex, you just be in the moment.
Yeah, it can go for 13 hours. It can go for 6 hours, because you don't keep a time limit. You don't keep a time limit that, okay, it has to go, go, go and complete. It can go anywhere, because you are just into your body. That's so difficult. You know what? I've recently come across this concept of mindful sex. And then for me, to introduce it to my husband is like, okay, today we are doing, but we don't know if you're going to have an intercourse or not. For me, it's like, and when, like, I'm already plagued with this idea, where if I say, what if for me mindful sex means like 30 days of just touching and anything. But somewhere I'm also putting this, that hard line, that okay, this is important, so I have to make sure that this also happens. So somewhere I'm also restraining myself, because it has been so drilled that that expectation is there, that what you need to meet that expectation, at least for the guy. I mean,
Yeah, I think if we stop having like outcome driven sex, at some point people will have orgasms because you're so free. This is the natural phenomena of the body that it orgasms after some time. I think so, but I mean, it's hard to bring it in your day-to-day life because you're like, well, I only have 1 hour and then I have work, and I was going to ask you, like, what do you do when you're so busy? um I mean, this kind of stuff is probably only possible on the weekend or on vacations, right? Like, because you have so much to do and you still want to have some intimate time rest of the year as well, and not just on vacations or weekends.
yeah, yeah. So I will say that there is nothing wrong in having that hot, fast model of sex. But if you feel that, okay, you're not able to match up, or there is something, you are withdrawing, or some coolness is happening, you need to see that, okay, is there something my body is wanting something different? So as long as you are, but then of course you need to complement, and that's where I say that make time for sex, make adequate time for sex. So beforehand, you schedule it that okay, you have time and you don't have to run anywhere. So I think a lot of people, they don't even pay attention to that. Yes, we can schedule a time for sex where we can give our body that kind of space, and not just keep it to like, okay, we have to finish it in 1 hour. Trust me, it's so subconscious. It's not even, it has become such a default mode that you don't have to think that I'm doing it half an hour. Automatically, you're your guy, you are taken in that okay, it will finish, because yes, I have to sleep by 12, or I have to sleep by at least 1, that there is some time limit that I have to finish so that I
Yeah.
can sleep. And
So it's interesting you say that people should schedule time for sex. So I was reading somewhere in some book where a sex coach, and I forget the name, but she said something really interesting that stuck with me. She said that people should never schedule sex because scheduled sex should not happen. What they should schedule is intimate time, like actually wholesome time with your partner. This could lead to listening to music together, eating together, cuddling together, talking together. It could be a lot of things, and it could also lead to sex. So what is your opinion on that? Do you think people should schedule sex instead?
yeah, I mean, that's what I meant. That one thing is that sex is not equal to intercourse. Sex involves everything which is intimate, physically intimate, even sexy. Like the word sexy is also, when we say I'm feeling sexy, or she's looking so sexy, doesn't mean we are talking about genitals. We can talk about attitude, confidence. So I include everything. Yes, she's right that it's about scheduling intimate time. Again, going back, that we are not focusing on the outcome driven sex, that's been a big challenge, a big challenge. And at least I can say Indians are so good at lying. I get so many men. I get so many men who say I'm having a 19 years satisfied marriage, and then I am drawn towards this colleague of mine, and I can't stop thinking about her. And while I understand that, of course, monogamy, like, we'll discuss that monogamy is not natural for everyone, but they don't acknowledge that, yes, there can be some space where they feel that, okay, that's empty, or there is a, they put it like everything is okay, and then I'm just compulsively drawn towards this woman where I'm just thinking about her, and I have so many fantasies. And they keep their spouse aloof of that. So one thing I feel is like, I also feel is that fireworks happen when you have this radical authenticity. You have such a blaring authenticity that itself creates so much of connection where things can just flow. The body will just simply open up.
If somebody had to fix this sexless marriage thing, do you think counseling can fix that? And how many people are actually even practically willing to fix this in your experience?
Oh, it's sad that first of all they don't even think that they can seek help for this. They think that all I can do is just shush it down and suppress it, and that's what it is to be done. Yes, one partner, if somehow, if the other partner also succumbs, and then it's okay, like it will go like that, it will go, they will remain distant, but yeah, family image, joint housing loans, all that thing, kids, they become big reasons to just stay in that sexless marriage where couple will drift apart. That drifting happens at some level. And the other thing, so some people just drag it all the life. The other, where one person is like vehement, like, okay, I want it, I can't do without it, that person can be labeled as pervert, or just lusty or monster or whatever. But if one person, then also their fights are happening, this is happening, no, that again goes. Thirdly, yes, after some time, yeah, few people, they have started coming up because we talk a lot now. So people are seeing, and it is making like, okay, someone is talking, because 5 years back no one was even talking. Now there are a lot of people like me who talk about orgasm, who are, so you are reading this, so we are like, okay, this is being talked about. So what in my case I've seen, younger couples, yes, they reach early, like 26, like this woman, of course 9 years is a big deal. But a lot of couples, they wait it out. 2 or 3 years is minimum, they wait it out, like where nothing is happening. And then they come and they already say, I'll just take 2 sessions. There is this woman, she has reached out to me, and my assistant was talking to her, and she said, I just need 2 sessions. So even when they are reaching out, they feel like spending a lot of money or spending a lot of time is a waste. Give me instant solution.
Wow, yeah. No, you talked about this man who has had a 19 year long successful marriage, and then I mean, I feel like even people who are in monogamous marriages need to keep a little bit of an open mind, that once in a while you're going to meet someone and you're going to find someone else attractive. That doesn't mean that you're going to sleep with them, but I think this is a human instinct. And for a lot of partners, this is like kind of a deal breaker. Like, how dare you find this woman, or how dare you find this man attractive? And I feel like even people who are in sexless marriages are just in a sexless marriage with that one person. It's because everybody wants to have sex. Like, everybody has needs, and everybody's body needs that, right? So I feel like at some point they're gonna see someone else,
Yeah.
like this man, who will be attracted to someone else, and then that's how people start cheating, I think. unless
Yes,
unless someone
yes.
is in a polyamorous relationship, which is highly unlikely in a lot of societies.
Yeah, yeah, but there is not peace even at the either end. Like if you're cheating, then you have to be careful about, you have to delete your chats. In fact, sometimes I remember I would just reference the back chat, and I said, okay, you said this. They said I don't have the chat anymore. So then I realized, okay, so that's why, like, okay, because I have been in an extramarital affair. I'm myself been, and I know how it works for a married man who is in a loving marriage. The man I dated for some time, this was like, I'm talking about 9 years back. And he would give me instruction that, no, don't call me now, I'm with my wife. Or when he was with me and his wife called, and he would say, I'm at some other place while he was with me. So I was like, for me, you know what, extramarital affair is more of an inconvenience. It's like I said, I like monogamy, but straight and simple. I can't navigate. This is for me. It's like practical, simple solution. Just for the practicality, is one reason that I chose monogamy. That, oh, it's simple. Because yes, non-monogamy, you also have to navigate jealousy. Jealousy is there, and I won't say it's not possible, but extramarital affair is not easy either. There are complications there. They think that, okay, they can have the cake and eat it too, but it's not possible. There is always a fear of being caught. There's always a
So
hidden
if
fear of
he
being
was in
caught.
a loving marriage, what was his motivation to be with you?
Yeah, so that's where I think that boldness, that a lot of women, I was doing this art of intimacy workshop, and I had this practice on seduction. That there is a practice where you seduce your partner and your partner is seducing you. And I think that's something a lot of women have forgotten that art, because they don't want to become across as too sexy or slutty, and they might do it in the bedroom, but then in the rest of their day to day life, they will be like very closed and professional, especially when they have to deal with men around. So they have to be like, if they start showing their sexiness at workplace, they will land in the trouble, is that what a lot of women might think. And they don't show their sexiness, so they keep their sexiness to this particular part of the life, but it's not going to blossom. because you're putting brakes. You're saying, okay, I can be sexy only when I am with my husband. There I can do everything. There he can get me a lingerie and I'm wearing it, but rest of my life I am not sexy. So I feel, because in my workshop when women come and I said, okay, seduce your husband, they were like doing this. They were not even like like all this and all this and all this. I was full into this. I was like full on my husband. But then I saw there was so much of hesitation. They were, I said, show your inner Helen, show your inner
Yeah.
Monica, Dawn, like that. They say there that what was it's called? She was this Dawn's girl. She has this name. I don't remember the name, but yeah, like show full on this, like completely
Yeah,
go
something
into this.
sexy and hot. Yeah. Interesting. So, before we started recording the podcast, we talked about why women fake orgasms. And there's a lot of reasons, of course, social pressure and the fact that they can't orgasm. And, I chipped in that if you're a woman who doesn't fake orgasms, then you're very difficult because you're like very demanding. But the problem is a lot of women still fake orgasms. Like you told me, like 50 to 60% of them fake orgasms. And I feel like a huge reason behind that is because a lot of partners don't know how to actually make them orgasm. Like simply, if a woman is not orgasming, then you're basically not paying enough attention, or she doesn't know enough about her sexuality that she can communicate to you. So I think there is a fundamental difference in how men and women are different. And what is this difference?
A woman needs a much more warm up time than a man. A man can, his this is scientifically proven, a lot of times, because there is again an alternate which is a school of thought that is emerging, is like, don't oversimplify male sexuality. Don't say that okay, men can just get horny. But even with the complexities of male sexuality, a female needs a much longer time to warm up, her body, which is like 25 to 30 minutes. And I remember I was
And
talking
men
to
can do
this
it much faster. I mean, it's true.
5 6 minutes, they can get over. For them it's like resolution
30 seconds is
from,
also fine for some men. I mean, I don't know why men would be upset about it because it's true.
yeah, from arousal to resolution, it's like it can go in 5 6 minutes. It can, I mean, they are capable of having instant arousal and orgasm, but women, they are not. So I think that's a difference, that is number one difference. And male, a man doesn't know about this because no one talks about it. Because movies, they just show immediate, it's all led by man, movie and porn is led by man. So a woman is just following suit. She's not saying, hey, I'm different than you, give me something different than what you are doing to me. So it's all the identical goes on, and they try to replicate in the bedroom, thinking the woman in front of me, she will also behave like a man. So
What are some other differences in male and female sexuality that are underexplored?
that's a good question. That women don't need intercourse to orgasm. Women can just orgasm through clitoris. Orgasm, ejaculation is primary for a man. It is something that is primary for a man, and that's why lesbians have sex. When they say that okay, if intercourse is so important, then lesbians should have the most orgasm gap. But if you see the orgasm gap between heterosexual women and lesbian women fare far better than
Yeah,
heterosexual
yeah,
women.
yeah. There are studies about it. I actually read something like that, that women in heterosexual relationships have least orgasms, and women in lesbian relationships have the highest number of orgasms. And
Yeah,
between men and women in heterosexual relationships, men have more orgasms because it's so
because there is
fast.
no because there is no penis to get distracted.
Exactly. Right. And so, I mean, a lot of people do know, a lot of men also know that women don't need penetration to orgasm. I think this is a pretty common fact. So, why
Yeah,
do they
this
still
is
get it wrong?
um probably because I can tell you with the reference of sex toys, and I've seen this happening in my own marriage, like very early in the marriage, like early as in the last year only, and even now, like I do feel. Because now I had a word with my husband, and one day he said that, okay, do you want a sex toy? He was in a happy mood. Do you want a sex toy? I said, yeah, get me. And then I kind of pleased myself, you know. But the first time when I used it, he was like, oh, you can satisfy yourself. What about me? So somewhere, I do feel that men need more of that partnered. I won't say that we don't need as much, but I feel that men, for a woman, it's easy to satisfy her own body because she knows it. So I think that's one reason that despite this being common knowledge, it can come as a threat that, oh, she doesn't need me because this she can do by herself, or this something, this does not require my penis, my dick, because that's such a big thing for me. My dick is so big for me and she doesn't need it.
Why does she not need it? No, but that's funny you say that because men and teenage boys start watching porn and start masturbating as early as 10, 9, even younger. So it's a bit alarming that they don't know their bodies as adult males, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they just know what they watched. Even for a man, also, like that's where so many men get into this performance anxiety that it's like, you know, these supplements, Viagra, it's a real market. All the Viagra supplements, Ashwagandha, Shilajit, Ayurveda market, you know, this penis implants, these penis pumps, penis rings. There is a big market who is promising men to last longer because all they know is this, that okay, somehow I have to focus on this, but they don't understand the relation between their this organ and the rest of the body and the mind. So that is something that even men are deprived of because porn never talks about the rest of the body of a man.
That's true. Yeah, the mindfulness. And what is a really major misconception most couples get wrong besides these things in terms of female and male sexuality? I'm sure there's more stuff, like there's a whole understudied field about how women are different and we don't know that.
Yeah, libido mismatch because you know, no matter what kind of a pair you are, there will be a libido mismatch. There will be a partner with a higher sex drive, there will be a partner with a lower sex drive. And this is something that is not really talked about between the couple as a society. So they come into the marriage, the person with higher sex drive, he or she comes into the marriage thinking that, you know, I'm going to get a lot of sex. And in the honeymoon period, it works because you are so, you know, that new relationship energy and the hormones, they are giving you that push, they are giving you push, so you are able to match up to your partner. But once you settle into companionship, then the hormone that takes over is oxytocin, which is the libido depressor. Also, it also depresses your libido. So then automatically the person who has a low sex drive, they will automatically come to the level they are, and the higher sex drive partner, they feel cheated. They feel like you were so good when in the honeymoon we were so active, but now yeah, but they have always been like that. It's just a temporary spike they had. So I wish that's more talked about. Yeah.
How can we work through this?
So, first thing is understanding that not all sex is equal to intercourse and should be intercourse, because if you have more options, you know, the thing is people run out of options. They say sex or no sex. They don't see everything which is in between. If they start seeing everything in between and they start valuing everything that is in between, I think we have, better marriages, better relationships, and happier people.
But you know, I think there are several misconceptions about libido mismatch as well. The first one is, and it's to an extent scientifically proven. So if something is scientifically proven, people tend to believe that, which is that men have far higher sex drive than most women. I feel like that's not necessarily true. I think what is the case is that women have a lower threshold for sexual disgust. So I'm more likely to have an ick and find something more disgusting which can put me off, and the man not. So that looks like a man has much higher sex drive, which is probably not the case, but it just translates like that because I'm more likely to get the ick and I'm more likely to be disgusted by something much faster than a man is. That's just my interpretation. this is backed by absolutely no research, it's just an observation because I read so much about men having higher sex drives. And I was like, I think women just have a lower disgust threshold. And the other
Lovely.
thing is, another thing I think is a really big misconception is that people who walk into marriages with higher sex drives or relationships, I feel like they feel the opposite. They feel like, oh my God, if I ask for too much, I'm going to be slut shamed. But maybe that's just the perception of women. That's a lot of women on Reddit saying that we have our sex drives are a lot higher than our male partners, but we don't know if we should say that because then we're going to be slut shamed. But maybe that's just for women. Men probably go into marriages or relationships thinking that they're going to get a lot of sex, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. I think that lower threshold is true because a woman's sexual desire is also contextual. Means for her, the right context is important. That what is the context? If anything, any thing changes in her context. For example, if her context is she is, for example, for me, like for me, staying healthy and being fit is a context. If I'm not fit, I don't feel. There was a time when my husband was getting close to me, and I just I had a outburst. I said that you need to know that for me, that my physical fitness is important. If I'm like if I'm just lazy and if I'm not working out, and because of that time I was shifting from one place to the another, so I had to just cancel my club subscription. Now, canceling club subscription has something to do with sex. It is only I could explain because I was trained in that. Otherwise, I would just think why all of a sudden I'm not feeling. They are not able to articulate. So club subscription cancellation can lead to low sex drive or no sex drive. Or just all these things matter.
You spoke about orgasm gap earlier, and which brings me to the to pleasure gap. What is pleasure gap?
Uh, Pleasure gap is in a sexual encounter where two or more people are involved. Not everyone is getting the, I will say, not equality, or I'll say equality means there is no equality in the sense that the, there can be one person who is at a advantage in the pleasure and the other person is not. So that can be like zero or nothing, in the sense one person did not get a pleasure at all, plus there can be a varying level of pleasure that they could have gotten more pleasure. There was a there was a scope for getting more pleasure, but they did not get it. So it's definitely not reaching your potential, or also you are prioritizing other person's pleasure. You are deprioritizing your own pleasure. So pleasure gap is something where the persons can have more pleasure but they did not have because of so and so.
And are usually women victims of pleasure gap or more men victims of pleasure gap?
Statistically, more women. Of course there will be men who also go with this performance pressure of performance, and taking in pills just to have that good solid rock on hard on. But then they are also victims because they are also pushing themselves to just focus on that particular part or event. But then by and large, statistically, there are much more women. That the ratio is like India Today survey that was done. That said that 98% of women, not 81% of women are unhappy with their sex life, whereas 98% of men were happy with their sex life. So that was like a huge gap.
Wow. And how can people fix this?
Um, I will say the simplest is you buy a vibrator. I mean, for me, it was not until a vibrator, I used a vibrator, that I didn't know what an orgasm was. So I think vibrators are trained to get women those orgasms and understand what pleasure can be. So at least they have this one. Because, I was just doing this, I think I was doing an interview, and where she said that a lot of women have this shame also on touching themselves. Like, using their own hands to touch their genitalia is a big taboo for a lot of women. So if you give them an object, they can use the object, they can use the object to touch themselves. So I think that's also breaks that barrier. So I think, of course, by knowing for yourself what pleasure um, is one, you can buy a vibrator. Second is, of course, knowing that what you feel is true. Like, if they give themselves permission to what do I like rather than what I'm supposed to like. We always go by this supposed to, that especially in sex, there are pre-set scripts about what a woman should like. So, for example, if a woman says, okay, what would you like in this moment? What kind of a touch you would like? I was doing this workshop where I blindfolded this woman. This was a blindfolded exercise, and there was this woman, she came, and I said that, you touch yourself in a way that you like. And she started touching her like this. She was touching her, she was doing very gentle. And then after the exercise, I asked everyone, what is your learning? And she said, I never knew how to touch myself. Like, how do I touch myself? How can I explain it to the other person?
Wow, that is so true. I feel like we should all move to the countryside so we have time for this. Because you don't have time for this stuff in the city, at least I don't. And that's really interesting. But there's a lot of conversation about how sex doesn't equate with orgasms anymore, sex doesn't equate with intercourse anymore. It's contextual, it's more nuanced, it's in many different shapes and forms now. So do you think orgasms are overrated?
Yeah, I mean, when I say orgasm, I'm not only talking about that physical peak. I like orgasm, we often see as like mountains, it's peaks, but there is something called as a valley also. So the you always think that it's the ascent. Like orgasm is the ascent. You're climbing the peak, you're getting higher and higher and higher. But then when we say the valley, that's where it's like dropping deeper and just resting and just be in that moment and floating, where your body is not at a peak, but there is such a beautiful relaxation happening in your body. We see relaxation as sloppy. We think relaxation means it's lazy, being couch potato, sloppy. But relaxation, there can be an active relaxation where you are aware, you are knowing, you are in the senses. It's not like you're like this. That's not relaxation. So there is the possibility of having a not a peak, because you often think orgasm is like you have to hit a peak. It has to go up, up, up until you reach a peak. That is called orgasm. I don't agree to that. And there are studies, like not just the regular studies, but very unique studies that say that, I will say, let's replace orgasm by fulfillment. Fulfillment can happen in a variety of methods or ways, but not that there is one single route to fulfillment.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a masterclass by this woman called Emily Morse. She's American. And basically, she talks about how you can delay your orgasm. And she's like, this is a skill that people can have to delay their orgasm so they can feel more fulfilled when they have one. Although I feel like that kind of training is more necessary for men because women already take a long time and men can orgasm much faster, and then it's over, right? It's basically game over. If a man is orgasming in the first 2 minutes, then you don't know what else to do the rest of the time. But she talks about it from the same perspective that you can be much, much, much more fulfilled if you can basically control your orgasm for a little bit and then you can explore further. What do you think about delaying the orgasm? Do you think it leads to greater fulfillment?
See, I have seen Emily's work, and what I find, and I think I can tell this being an Indian, because India is also the place of Tantra, the place of yoga, the place of ancient traditions where we talk about spirituality. And I feel that physical orgasm is a part of the orgasm for sure, but there is something which is called a soul fulfilling orgasm, or a soul fulfilling moment. So I don't go by that delaying the orgasm, which again she's talking more in the terms of like delaying the peak is yet to come. And I disagree with the peak. I say that why not focus on the dropping down, where you there is no peak. You are just floating, or you are just being in that I don't know the word called limbo, in a state of limbo, or in a state of nothingness, where it's just like you feel like you're like a cloud. You are as light as a cloud. But we instead push our bodies to reach that peak, and delaying orgasm means delaying that peak. But this is again a peak centric um, outlook, which I say that we should focus as much on peak as much on valleys. There is a book which is written by Diana Richardson, Slow Sex, and she says that she had 13 hours of sex with her lover. So if you go by the if you go by the standard terminology, how can someone has 13 hours of sex? Not possible. But then she was just talking about dropping down into her body and just maybe staying connected. And she's talking about that you have intercourse with the pace of your breathing. So one inhale, 1 millimeter or 1 centimeter. So this
Right.
it's such a gradual, like this. And they say that this was beautiful. Like there was this another sex therapist, so there is this again organization called ISTA, international, this school of temple arts international school of temple arts. So ISTA is heavily focused on integrating spirituality and sexuality. So there, the sex coach, she's saying that one thing I always tell to my lover, all my lovers, I like, she said that one thing I tell to all my lovers when I make love with them or one of them, that when they are entering me or when they are into intercourse, they say feel your cock, feel it, feel your penis, because they are so focused on that act that they stop feeling that how the skin feels, like it's feeling like. And then for feeling you have to pause, you can't be feeling when the real feeling will come when there is a pause. And I'm like, this is the skin, this is my skin, this is this skin, this is the so she's talking about feeling. Then she talks about breathing, like breathe. So when you are breathing, you automatically slow down. So of course, delaying orgasm, yes, you can delay. Peaks are not wrong, but peaks alone are not enough, I will say.
But this is really interesting that you put so much emphasis on like the valleys. How can people drop down? Like this is such a difficult thing to do as well. Like even for women, not just for men actually, to actually kind of drop down and be slow after being so close to hitting the peak. Are there any techniques to do that?
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to share this in the podcast. So I'll just do this with the help of this bottle. So usually when we drink water, when we are thirsty, we'll just, pick up the bottle. That's it, how we drink water.
Right.
If you have to drink water with all your senses, okay. And so first, when I hold the water, I'm seeing the shape of the water. Okay, I'm seeing this nice curve. Then I'm seeing the glass. Okay, this is a glass. So this has a specific sensation on my skin. When I'm holding this glass, it has a specific sensation that glass is creating on my skin and feeling that skin. And then if you see, there is a shine. Like this light is falling on this glass and it is giving us certain glossiness or shine. This again, the shine is changing. Then if you see, there are droplets in the inner wall of the bottle. So these different droplets, small droplets. And then finally, if you are drinking, you will see that the water is also changing shape. It's like, this kind of a this. So there is so much that we can take in from the sense of sight, and we just ignore all of it. We all ignore all of it, and we just focus on getting the job done, which is drinking water. Okay, that's just the sense of sight I've explored. The sense of touch, again, like I said, that holding this bottle, even feeling the curve. When you feel the curve, this is different than this. When your hand is moving through this curve versus hand is moving here, these are different sensations because this is a different shape, the different touches. Uh, and then when I take in the water, the touch of the water on my tongue, there's a touch and there's a taste, like how water feels on my skin and how water taste is on my skin. And then the sound, right? This
Yeah.
sound, this sound.
Right.
So there
That's true.
is then this clunkiness, like You see, if I'm just using, there's a clunkiness of this metal on the glass. We miss all these sensations, and that's where we are like looking for excitement, because the long lasting pleasure can only come from subtlety. If you want the pleasure to be long lasting, you have to subtle, because it's easier to relax. You can sleep for 8 hours, but you can't work for like non-stop, for 8 hours. So subtlety has a longer shelf life compared to intensity and excitement. So these are the senses. When I teach this is something I teach in my classes, and I teach in my coaching sessions, and then say, yeah, we don't do it, we don't do it. So yes.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I just want to do a quick rapid fire, but this has to be like really, really rapid, and the answers can't be long. This is the challenge. Okay, I want to know, what do you think about sex toys? Yes or no?
Great.
Great. Best advice for spicing up a relationship?
Maybe talking about fantasies.
What's your favorite sexual myth that you'd like to debunk?
That all sex doesn't have to end with intercourse.
What's a common sexual issue you think people overthink?
They think why the sex is not hot, why sex is not hot.
Wow. Porn, helpful or harmful?
Both.
How? I know it's a rapid fire, but I'm curious.
Uh,
How?
it's good for stimulation. Like, just take it as it is going to stimulate you, but don't take it for knowledge.
Right. Okay, you're actually the first person to say that it's both, because most people, most researchers, most doctors, most sex coaches are like, it's horrible. Don't watch porn. It's for men and blah blah. Okay. What's the most common sexual mistake people make?
Buying lingerie. Oh, I don't know. I mean, how buying? I've seen like a lot of newly wedded couples, and like the man is saying he's meeting the woman for the first time, or maybe getting into it. I bought her a red lingerie. I feel like I need some time to. This is like such a cliche stereotype.
That is true. Although I think the trend has gone down a bit, or maybe that's just
They
me.
still
I
they
just
still
don't
do.
think
They
that.
they advertise honeymoon lingerie. You're going on a honeymoon, buy.
But you don't need lingerie. Okay. One word to describe good communication in bed.
No, you can say no.
And there's this another thing like self pleasure. So I just want to quickly have like three or four things that I want to ask you. What's the best time of the day for self pleasure?
Anytime.
I mean, after a workout, before a meal, something like that.
I think self pleasure just charges you up. It can relax you. It can charge you when you are in stress. You can pleasure yourself to release that stress, and when you are feeling lethargic, you can pleasure yourself to even boost up the endorphin. So I think it has the both effect. Where so I will say, of course, you need the privacy. You can't, you that's exhibitionism if you want to pleasure yourself in public or something out. uh, but yeah, practically any time, be it morning, be it lunch, be it night, any time.
What's one fantasy you recommend women to explore solo?
Maybe rubbing them on a tree. I think that will give some good sensations.
Really? Wow. Okay. It's too hard, I thought.
With
It's
clothes,
too
with clothes,
coarse
with
and too
clothes.
hard. Ah, okay. Okay, good to know. And do you recommend vibrators or hands?
Both have their different roles. I feel vibrators have exquisite pleasure, and you not always. Sometimes you can use your hands. So try both.
What's one thing every couple should try out at least once?
Flirting, at least once. I mean, at most of the times. But like, yes, if you're not flirting, you need to flirt.
I thought everybody flirts, but maybe not.
Yeah, I mean that's something that is an like I according to me, it's an integral part of the relationship, flirting with each other. And I also recommend a lot of people have these boundaries around sexual flirting, or flirting itself is seen as sexual, but flirting is not sexual only. There can be non-sexual flirting, which is so energizing. I feel as I say, go have non.
Playful flirting, yeah. Okay, the last thing about self pleasure. Do you recommend self pleasure in bed or in a shower?
Bed. I'm a lazy person. I like to just sit, lie down, and do it.
I mean, this is also like very something that's packaged in like romance novels. You can do stuff in the shower. I do think that it's very inconvenient and very uncomfortable. After some time, you're like, what's going on? Okay, well, thank you for speaking with me. This was so great.
Yeah, Coco, I loved it. I loved it.
Thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope that you feel better and you recover soon and more
Thank
power.
you.